Okay, this is the College Prep English class at Excellence in Education on April 14th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Share the screen. And off we go. Brian, did our broadcast work last week?
Yeah, it seemed to. There was a few times that it was like shaky, as in the audio, but it worked.
I've noticed that shakiness, and I suspect that we can attribute that to the Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
They say with
like
Google that you should use a Ethernet cord rather than Wi-Fi, but anyway, it seems to be good enough. We had it echoing.
Yeah, no, that's what I noticed.
I have no idea
well.
why that happened. It's not happening now. I'm assuming everything.
I went on the YouTube page and then just rewatched it there. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was the echo that was worrying me.
Mm-hmm.
We've got all kinds of interesting things, many of which I've added since we started. Let me look at this one little thing. Well, let's go over to our agenda items first. Okay, for some reason, I find everything is pointing at the Founding Fathers.
Mm-hmm.
I find the poetry sort of took us there, and these biographies that I came across online. Read the whole biography if you feel at all inclined to do so. And as I said, the original source documents are really superbly written, and I'd like to look at those, but even better are the biographies. And so one of the people that I introduced you to here, I believe I've mentioned him before, is Robert Fisk.
Yes.
And the reason I mention that is because he just gave this lecture less than a month ago.
I think it was April 10th.
April 10th? I thought it was March.
From what I saw, I saw something.
Anyway, it was recent.
Yeah.
And so I try to keep up with these people and see when they do something interesting. And he's one of my favorite journalists. Although I'm not that interested in the Middle East, and I have difficulty following what's going on there. There's so much.
Yeah, there is so much going on.
Yeah, and the history is so complex, and we know nothing about it.
Well, I know a little something about it.
Good.
Well, the territory was pretty much contested because the different tribes. Well, the different tribes in the Bible, how they all split up and the languages were made confusing. So for the longest time, the Middle East, they were all there was conflict between each other on saying, "Oh, this is my land, this is your land," and then they thought, and then Israel is very prosperous, and so they got jealous of that, and so then they all decided to team up against Israel. But now, and Robert Fisk was saying how we probably should have minded our own business and kept our nose out of the Middle East. And so, well, we got involved. That altered a few things, and so yeah, we put troops in. We made it stabilized. We stabilized it, but then we withdrew the troops. So that kind of left a big gap. And with Osama bin Laden being dead, there were a lot of factors that contributed to ISIS. The Syrian rebels, pretty much all the Syrian rebels, and the Taliban, the rebels, Al Qaeda, all these groups. There's mainly two groups in the Middle East now. That's ISIS and non-ISIS. Everybody who's just of Muslim faith or similar faith and interest, everybody just joined ISIS. So ISIS is a big power now, and there are all these just refugees just flooding in Turkey.
And into Europe to some extent.
Yes.
Well, I heard recently that it's around 1% who actually get to Europe. An awful lot more refugees than that. Very good, very good. It's hard to get real news on it, though. We do not get it in this country.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons is, for example, Fisk, although he's been talking about retiring for a decade or so, but he's the major person who knows the material, and he's in high demand. But he's not syndicated in this country. You can easily find him online. Just go out there, and I gave you a couple of links, in fact, to in the Fisk page.
Oh yeah.
To places where you can read his material.
He's not what in this country?
Syndicated.
What's
In other
that?
words,
Not
his
his.
columns are not automatically reprinted here in our mainstream media. Even though he's, well, as I say, the most renowned journalist.
Yeah.
And so you have to hunt around a little bit to get more of a picture of what's going on. And it really just makes so much sense to find somebody like that, if they exist, who actually knows the history, knows the languages, speaks directly to the people.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Fisk makes some mistakes. Yes. One of the things he takes a certain amount of pride in is he doesn't use the internet. He doesn't use Google. And so in this lecture, now you did listen to the lecture, all of you, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Good, good. I mean, he does a beautiful job of lecturing, and it's improvisatory. It's not necessarily quite as high a level as you'll find coming from some of the others, specifically Eagleton and Hitchens. But it's really beautiful. I found it rather interesting that they referred to him as Mr. Fisk.
Yeah.
And yet, of course, he started out, he did his doctoral degree at Trinity College, Dublin, and he's got another dozen or so honoraries after that. So, I mean, he is an educated character. But he makes one little mistake, and I noticed this before. I wasn't going to bother to bring it up again, but he did it again. In that, do you remember his reference to Benjamin Bush?
Yes. Well, I don't know, but Benjamin Bush. He talked about it. He did say. I know. Wasn't there? He said like, "Don't push it up" or something. Well, I don't know, but don't. I remember him mentioning Bush a couple. Benjamin Bush.
This
a
has
couple
nothing to do with
the lecture.
the Bush family.
No, I know, but I'm trying to. I remember he was talking about Benjamin Bush in the letter or something.
Does anybody remember what he was saying?
I do not.
Okay, really, what he was saying was, and I thought this was the most interesting part of his lecture this time, as well as previously. He talks about the journalism as it takes place and as it appears in United States newspapers. And then he pulls out these letters from this soldier, Marine, Benjamin Bush in Ramadi in Iraq. And he reads them. And here's a section of one that he reads. This is describing what they're doing there in Iraq. And he says, "The instinct to impose order and command the requisite discipline in the Iraqi leadership must be quelled in order to allow sovereign stewardship to develop at its native pace and in a native form. I fight myself to remain insignificant in the process. I haven't the nature for passive observation. I share the American fascination with action, and it has constantly betrayed us in our foreign policy. Our continued involvement will continue the state of dependency, and our eventual departure will leave nothing but cosmetic structure here. Iraq will return to what it is. Our common sense is not common to these people, and that understanding must be given proper respect. I do my best, but I twitch with an urge for the folly of intrusion." Listen to those words.
Yeah.
I do my best, but I twitch with an urge for the folly of intrusion. After which he said, "Why don't journalists write like that? Why is there's no literary value to what is being written?" And here's the soldier writing. And he doesn't bother, however, to tell you why. Now I'm going to tell you why. Who is Benjamin Bush? Well, he's a major in Ramadi, writing home. To whom is he writing? He's writing to his father. His father is Frederick Bush, who is a professor emeritus at Colgate University and has a raft of literary awards. This is not a father that you write fumblingly inarticulate things to.
Yeah.
And the one thing, of course, that's really missing here is where did he learn it? Well, he may not have learned it at school. He certainly didn't learn it in the military. He was homeschooled. I don't mean that he was taken out of school and homeschooled, but he learned this articulacy from his parentage, from his family. And I think that's sort of important, but nobody thinks about homeschooling. It sort of flies under the radar. It isn't really noticed. Anyway, there is an article here. This article is in our classroom, and I wrote it some time ago, referring to, I misspelled the Bush here.
It's like B-U-C-H.
B-U-S-C-H. That would be the German spelling. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it explains in here exactly what you would really expect from someone in that situation. It explains why it sounds so wonderful, and indeed it does sound wonderful. And I was surprised he brought this up again and mentioned it just last month, in that he had done it before, and it's certainly worthy of mention. But the point he was trying to make, and indeed makes very well, is where is the literary value in journalism? Now, we're going to look further today at where the literary value is in the founding of our country. I keep on, everything seems to be sort of focusing there. The poetry took us there. The recommendations in the Common Core system take us there. Common Core puts a lot of emphasis on primary source material. And of course, the primary source material we're talking about here is the Declaration of Independence. Interestingly, and I just discovered this and really thought to research it before, but you're familiar with the Gettysburg Address.
Yes.
We should probably look at it. It's wonderful. But when he says 77 years ago, what exactly is he referring to? He's referring to the Declaration of Independence. He's not referring to actual independence or the Constitution or even the founding of the country or even the winning of the war. He's talking about the Declaration of Independence. And indeed, he talks directly about Jefferson here. And I thought it might be nice to look at some of that. Okay, let's go and take a look at our assignments. Okay, we'll go back to, let's quickly, if that appeals to everyone, let's go over here and take a look at Brian's recent submission or submittal. Such a late one could use either word. Submittal has fewer meanings. Okay, interesting choice of subject here, and of course we're talking about OPEC. What prompted you to do OPEC? Was that an assignment or?
No, I actually read an article about it online, and I thought about it more, and I was like, wow, this is something that I personally have never heard of really that much in detail, and I'm sure that most don't either. And it's actually kind of a big part of the economy and
Indeed.
just fuel in general, because that's what it has to do with.
Right. It's a coalition of oil-producing countries.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
One of the major points that I tried to make in the other article you wrote, the one to which you added revisions today.
Oh, yeah.
Was that we're still, the dollar is the currency with which oil is bought. Used to be the pound sterling, and it may go on to be something else in the future.
That's what I was also thinking of as well. Like now, or before it was that, and then now it's the dollar. But what about later years on?
It may well have become the euro.
It possibly
or something else. And a lot of people are afraid of that. I mean, what would happen, for example, to prices of everything in our country
if
the cost of petrol, if you'd like, were to double or treble as it is in most of Europe, for example. That would be a major blow. And some people have indeed pointed out the fact that Saddam Hussein was in the process of switching over to sell oil with euros, for euros instead. And that may have had something to do with what happened to him. Okay, just possibly. A thought. Okay, let's look at this. One of the big things I keep on saying, and I'm saying it so often, I'm sure you folks are getting tired of listening to it, is listen to what you're writing. And the first one perhaps doesn't work so much, but these were little snippets I pulled out, and which I feel would offend your ear. And I'm hoping they will offend your ear. Your ears are getting better.
Off guard. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't
catch the reader off guard, as in like it's maybe solid writing all the way through, but just a few.
Well, it's nice to do something that will catch the reader's ear, certainly, but you don't want something that offends the ear.
Yeah.
Or doesn't work. And so the first one was simply a poor choice of words. Fabricated its headquarters in Geneva. To fabricate is to manufacture.
Produce, yeah.
And so if you're actually manufacturing the building, that might make more sense. But I suggested establish, which is
establish. Yeah, that's the most common. Yeah, establishment.
And this one, of course, unrest in many different parts among the world. I know that you didn't like that when you did it.
I probably just.
Okay. Among, of course, our problem here is that's a count noun. That works with count nouns. So you could talk about among the accountants of the world or among the sergeants of the world. You see, but among the world doesn't work. And searched to further enhance. Well, there are two verbs here, to search and to seek. And search specifically means trying to locate the specific location, whereas seek can also mean to try.
Yeah, many things, yeah.
Right. So a seek to further enhance would work just fine here, but search doesn't. Okay, let's go.
I also had one question.
Yeah.
Right below, do you hear the problems? What is that little, do those represent anything?
They're always up there. The reason I put them in there is that in order to drop comments in red and bold, I simply take one of these, which is a pair of brackets in red and bold, and paste it in wherever I need to in order to fill it in.
Gotcha.
And when I create them at the beginning, I create 3 of them just in case I lose one or two.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Why don't you just manually
take them out when I'm done?
No. You said you keep them up there so you can put them in anywhere in the text. Why don't you just put them in the text as you go? Insert them in text.
I do. But you see, from time to time, I find myself having to cut and paste something else, and then I lose it, and I have to go and grab it and stick it in the clipboard again. Yeah, it's just a habit.
Yeah.
There's no good.
I was confused as to what it was.
Okay. Last but not least, it's a cliche, and sometimes it's the appropriate thing, especially if the last thing you're mentioning is far from the least or particularly important. I suspect that Gabon may be close to the least important of them. I don't know. Yeah. Where is Gabon, anybody?
I am unaware.
Okay, west coast of Africa, just under the bend, right by Cameroon. Okay, OPEC was founded or established, works better, And then you say here, this was then moved to a more ideal location of Vienna. Now, if you said it was moved to a more ideal location, that would be fine. But when you say the actual place it's moving to, I felt changing it to the worked better.
Yeah.
Because it was moved to the more ideal
exactly.
location, Vienna.
Yeah.
Okay, where's Vienna?
It says right there.
Yeah.
Austria.
It is Austria. It is in the east end of Austria, on the Danube River, and it's actually a chunk when East Germany was East Germany. It's sort of a chunk of the West that's stuck into East Germany and Czechoslovakia and extended it into areas which made it surrounded by Eastern Bloc countries. Whatever happened in Austria? Oh, let's get into a little bit of history at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting, nicely written. Strange conflation of two cliches. In fact, you did something like this before, if I recall correct. We've got inalienable rights and we've got right of passage. And you've managed to give us an inalienable right of passage, which I don't think is what you meant. Inalienable means indisputable, or irrefutable, or even irrefragable. But I'm not sure that's exactly what you meant by it. And the right of passage is usually somewhat different. What do you understand to be a right of passage? Generally, it's sort of some. I'm sorry. Does anybody have any thoughts?
It's kind of like when you are the older brother and you have a rite of passage over the younger brother.
Not necessarily, but it would happen. Certainly, an older brother would
have that
go through a rite of passage,
exactly.
And then eventually the younger brother would too.
Oh yeah, back and forth.
Okay, let's see. The national and global economic well-being represented. I didn't see putting it in perfect tense there. It didn't seem to work. Represented the main risk to the oil market early in the decade. I'm assuming here we're still talking about 60s because the last thing you talked about was the 60s date.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay, I think that would make it clearer. And then here we have escalating social and private unrest in many parts among the world, of the world, works much better. And I felt that this was awkward here. The world affected both supply and demand factors throughout the first half of the decade, although the market prices and sales remained relatively balanced throughout the duration. And I asked, are you trying to say that market prices remain steady despite global upheavals?
Yeah, I didn't word it properly.
You could have reduced it down into something much smaller than that. Okay, nicely done. And definitely an improvement. You've got solid writing here. One of the things that I should probably have said something about is trying to create the arc. So you've got the introduction and the conclusion and the verification in the middle there. I felt it really didn't make it clear where you were going with it. Any questions on this one? Okay. Okay, let's go up to the beginning here, which is where we started. Okay, number of things we deferred to this week. Discussion of submitted projects, discussion of American source documents, Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson, and the long-term effect of reduced Lexile levels. I may add that in from last week. We determined that Thomas Paine's common sense, the plain language which inspired the American Revolution, was college reading level, grade 13, whereas current political speech used to persuade the electorate tends to be aimed at 4th to 7th graders, which is what we see here. Very different world, isn't it, when we think about it? And the question I'm asking, of course, is have American reading levels fallen that much? How many of you have read 1984? Orwell.
No.
I'm not sure that I want to inflict it on you, although I recommend it. I'll find it out there for you. But it's an important thing to understand. I would certainly read the Cliff Notes or read the Wikipedia article on it so that you know what he's talking about there. He comes up, we're talking Orwell here now, George Orwell.
Yeah.
One of the themes that runs through 1984 in this futuristic dystopia, a terribly repressive regime in which thought is controlled throughout Oceania, is newspeak. Now, newspeak is the language, and there's one of the characters there who's putting this dictionary together, and he manages to make the dictionary so much smaller than it was before by just getting rid of all those other words, and then making it even smaller so you can pull it down to only the words that convey meanings that are sanctioned by the state. And this is a way. You all did watch this other this one here, The Genius of Language, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what does he say in there about which precedes what? The language precedes the thought, or the thought precedes the words?
Well, the thought
Precedes the words,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's one would assume, but in some cases, one finds that the thoughts simply aren't there until the words are there to think them with. And so I think it can go both ways.
words
Yeah.
isn't verbally speak because one can think words inside.
I kind of agree with you. I think thoughts do precede words in a lot of ways, but they're really rather impotent and pointless until you can convey them somehow or other.
Yeah.
An example of this in modern usage is the word mir in Russian, which means officially peace. But if you look at it in an official dictionary, it means that state that the world will achieve when it all becomes blissfully communistic. And so, in other words, defining the word peace as that which is achieved when you see the point that they tried to make, it didn't work very well. But and indeed, there's a major question about whether we're even talking about communism when we're talking about the Soviet bloc. Okay, but here one of the questions that I just wanted to throw out there is, if we look at the plummeting level of literacy in our country as a result largely of the public school population, you can't help drawing a parallel between that and 1984 concept of newspeak. Now, I don't know how intentional it necessarily is, but it has been incredibly effective. A number of books have been written on the subject of dumbing us down in the public school system, several of which you'll find out there in the bookstore by I will remember his name shortly. Anyway, I recommend them. Although he's a lousy speaker.
Painful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, he's an award-winning teacher who turned around and wrote these books about how we're doing such a terrible disservice to our. Somebody give me his name. All right. Anyway, but he doesn't really speak well. He's a victim, I suppose, of the same thing. All right. We played around with Ngram Viewer, at least I talked about it. Did anybody do any searches with that?
I did a few, yeah.
Tell us what
I went through for my economics book. I was reading through that, and I found a few words, and just for fun, I looked them up, and that thing's really cool. I didn't know that existed, and I told my friend about it, and he was using it too. But it's so cool because you can just type in like any word and just see its like origin and like when. It'd be really cool if you could see where it came from, like where it. Like,
right.
Really,
well,
really
you still need a dictionary for that sometimes, but see if you can get the cool and the like out of your narrative. Just think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely, it's a wonderful tool. It was preceded, really, the best tool that we had at our disposal before that sort of thing came along was the Oxford English Dictionary, or the OED, which was not just a dictionary, it was a dictionary. And you can get it now on a stick. It's absolutely wonderful, but you don't need it anymore. What it did was provide for each entry historical usage, and it would tell you the first place in literature where a particular word was found, and then how it was used through history. Very useful, but now, of course, we have other tools that we can do that same thing. Okay, so the Ngram Viewer, wonderful tool. It's constrained to literature, not the universal corpus of online resources. It would be nice if one had something that analyzed that more effectively. Okay, we looked at we looked at papers this week, but has anybody decided that any of these things are going to inspire them to write something?
Well, I was actually inspired by a couple of the talks on this page that were relating to terrorism. Yeah, I felt like I wanted to write on that next week.
Wonderful.
Next week, especially Robert Frisk's video on terrorism.
Yeah, he goes on. We see the word over and over again.
Yeah.
And not only that, in other lectures, not this one particularly, but you see the same soundbite going through all of the media.
Yeah.
It's just as though somebody said, okay, here's what you're going to use. And it just
they're just reusing the same things. And he even said they're reusing the same cliches and everything.
Exactly.
So that's why the Middle East news sounds like it's super repetitive, even though it's actually very complicated.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And indeed, he maintains that these people should be trying to analyze it and try to understand why it's happening rather than simply making a point of trying to scare everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very good. Also, I just wanted to do congratulations this week. Brian has just finished his A in the class, actually gone a little, overshot it a little bit. So the rest of you have a little ways to go, I think. Okay, let's look at our page on poetry just briefly here.
Actually, there's a few ones on there that were really, really good.
Good. Did you all get a chance to read it? I'm going to see if I can find it here. Good old Fisk. There's.
Are we going to have a party at the end of the year? Or just
well, absolutely.
Party as in bring food?
Well, party as in potables and comestibles,
Yes.
and libations if necessary. Yes, but how can we make it a party that's consistent with the level of scholarly fascination that we've been going through? One of the things I'm happy to see is that you folks are becoming comfortable listening to university lectures. I mean, this, and it's not that hard to understand them, is it?
No.
Yeah, Fisk does a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Also, I gave you some Eagleton this week, and just listening. Forget what he's saying.
Yeah, really.
but just listen to the
Construction
language,
with it.
and it is absolutely superb.
Yes.
And of course, that is so much higher than the level of a language you're going to find in most American
Mr.
universities.
Tichenor, did you hear anything about a Costco award-winning essay?
Costco?
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
This girl, she wrote a award-winning essay about Costco, and she got scholarships to 5 Ivy League colleges or universities.
Right.
Maybe we can dig that up.
Let's go ahead and see if you can research it if you know any more than you've
We all just
said.
need to write an essay on brand names.
I have heard that there is a school, I think it's in New York, that has excelled in producing people who have written award-winning essays that got them into all of the Ivy League colleges. And indeed, of course, you're going to find those essays, as I gave you this week. Has anybody looked at the 100 award-winning essays that have been posted? The link has been posted in the classroom.
Yeah, that's in there for a while, hasn't it?
That was an older one that I found somewhere else. This is a newer one.
Oh, gotcha. Is this like recently added?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Let's take us.
Right. How far down do I have to scroll to find this stuff?
Well, I tell you the truth, because this new classroom is very hard to move things around in. All the new stuff is at the bottom.
Do you put it on the assignments
And here it
page?
is. No, just a second. Those are the English words essential for an educated vocabulary. Here it is. 100 successful college admission applications essays. This is a link that will take you to a PDF, and might be slow to load, but see if you can get it. So go ahead and look at that. That one's more recent, and these things are delicious to read. Some of them are a bit depressing in various different ways, and moving in a lot of ways. But that's one of the things, I suppose, that makes them worthwhile. Speaking of which, why don't we go in here and look at the one that I brought up and thought that I should share with you. This vocabulary practice is brand new. I just put that in there. We're going to look at that. Okay, this is from Bafo Ose. I'm just guessing at pronunciation. He's applying to Duke University, and he is from Ghana. Where's Ghana?
Africa.
Good. There's a lot in Africa.
North Africa, right?
It's not. It's sub-Saharan, but it's close. Ghana is near Nigeria, and actually, it's been taken over largely by another country, Senegal, I believe. But Ghana is indeed on the west coast, and I hate to say this, but he had a very significant advantage over American applicants in that Ghana was a British Crown colony until 1956. Their education would be in English, and it's probably a better level of English than we have in this country. And so let's just look at it. When I lived in Ghana, I would ride my bike home every day after school. But little did I know that it would almost cost me my life. A nice little hook to catch the reader on. Mm-hmm. Soaking in sweat from the sub-Saharan heat, I came to a fork in the road. My options were to take a shorter path with a bridge weakened severely by recent storms, or to take a longer path, which, though significantly more arduous, would ensure my safe passage. As a reckless 13-year-old boy, I wanted the fast way. I pedaled out onto the bridge quickly, hoping to fly across when suddenly the support structure began to give way. Slamming on the brakes, I could feel the metal begin to contort beneath my wheels and was thrown by the jarring motion against the guardrails. The bridge was falling. Okay, notice the use of language. It's really there's not a word there you don't know.
Yeah, but it's professionally constructed.
Exactly. It's nicely put together. Slamming on the brakes. Mm-hmm. I could feel the metal begin to contort. Mm-hmm. Yes. Very nice. Beneath my wheels, and was thrown. Now this is a little bit awkward here, because what was thrown? Well, of course, sentence starts with I, and that's the answer to the question. Mm-hmm. But we also have another subject over here, the metal contorting, and it wasn't the metal that was thrown; it was I that was thrown by the jarring motion against the guardrails. Okay. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but as soon as I've read that much of it, I understand, and I think you understand also, the level of language that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. You look through all of these, you find none of them that have serious errors in them. All of them have errors, this one included. And that's probably essential. I'm guessing that if you don't have any errors at all, the guess might be that some professional went through it. You had somebody like me go over it, and that's not what they want. And so
pure raw material.
How would they say if one were to make a perfect essay?
How would one determine?
Yeah,
if it had been
they don't have
sent
any
to a
proof.
editor or something.
no, they don't. But they don't need it. What they need is something to go by when they're evaluating it. And indeed, I'm guessing, partly by things that they say, and of course these admissions officers have written commentary in these books. By all means, read their commentary. And I'm sure it comes from heart. But also, if you look at what qualifies as a winning essay, you will find that there is commonality there. And what I see is a level of erudition, a level of fecundity. You can look that one up if you'd like. That really is universal and unavoidable in the winning essays. And so that's really the level of language you want to achieve. It's not in itself necessarily sufficient, but it's necessary. Do you understand the difference there? You need more than just good language, but if you don't have good language, you haven't got it. And so I look forward to looking at some more of these. Another thing I wanted to mention to you folks, though, is the vocabulary journals. I haven't been, I've been remiss. I've been terribly sloppy about not prodding you into handing in vocabulary journals. I'm sure you've been all keeping them at home. But please post them so that you can share them with others and we can all learn.
Ever since I switched to the new website, I haven't been posting this regularly on vocabulary journals.
Right. So well, let's see what we can do. I wanted to show you some new vocabulary this week too. It just came up this morning, actually. Let me find this thing. But please go ahead and read more of these.
Yeah.
And the more you read, the more confidence you're going to gain, I think, in looking at these and concluding, I can do that. That's not above me. It's good. It's better than I'm doing now, but it's something I'm capable of doing. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, this odd thing came up. I posted this into a poetry forum, Altadene Poetry Forum. I got a big thing coming up with a anthology coming out in a week or two. Okay, so I shared this Longfellow poem. It's not one of mine. It's where are the poets unto whom belong the Olympian heights, whose singing shafts were sent straight to the mark, and not from bows half bent, but with the utmost tension of the thong? Where are the stately argosies of song, whose rushing keels made music as they went, sailing in search of some new continent, with all sails set and steady winds and strong? Perhaps there lives some dreamy boy untaught, in schools some graduate of the field or street, who shall become a master of the art, an admiral sailing through the high seas of thought, fearless and first, and steering with his fleet for lands not yet laid down in any chart. That's just beautifully done. I didn't do it justice. It's fascinating, the rhyme scheme too, which is very confusing. ABBA, ABBA, ABC, ABC. That's a very unusual rhyme scheme. Anyway, I threw this one up there, and a member of this group, who is a wonderful poet, responded here. A good thought, comment, I hope, on this site. as well as on those possibilities of unsung artistic explorers who view poetry as a vehicle of inspiration and aspiration, not merely exasperation or consternation. Good old Longfellow. He does wonderful things with language, so I appreciate that. So I had to follow with something similar. He used all these Latinate words, consternation, exasperation. So, not to mention aggravation, perspiration, frustration, disconsolation, and devastation. Laudation to those who have kept the flow going, and contrition mixed with rationalization for my cessation and stagnation. Perhaps in anticipation of reinitiation and continuation of poetic germination, imagination, and gestation. Okay, so I had to respond to it.
Yeah.
Where was this?
This is a closed poetry group.
Okay.
If you're really interested, I can I'll give you a link and you can join in. But of course, in responding to this, I had to cheat a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And to cheat a little bit, I looked this up online and immediately found this wonderful list of Asian words, basically this Latin suffix. And I thought I'd give it to you folks. Know them. They're worth knowing. They're worth
They
knowing.
look like
I looked through these, and it's been quite some time since I added something to my vocabulary list. And I did add, what I would like you to do is go through and add to your vocabulary list any words in here that you don't know already.
That I don't know.
That you don't know. Probably not too many. Look at them
Probably a
there.
lot.
Adumbration, perturbation, ratiocination. That one was one I added. Venation. Okay, so with adumbration, what is adumbration? What is an umbra? What is an umbrella?
A tool that's used to keep water off one's head.
Or the sun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In some
It
cases.
provides shade.
Mhm.
Shade.
Umbra is shade.
Hmm.
Adumbration is to foreshadow. Okay. We can go through these if you'd like. I found in this list 5 words that I wanted to add to my
The cats.
vocabulary listing.
Oh,
Sombrero.
yes, sombrero. Spanish. Oh, we were just talking about the Spanish word for shade is sombra,
So
Okay.
then
and
sombrero.
it's similar to umbrella and umbra.
Of course,
Mhm.
it's from the Latin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Actually, I haven't brought it up for. I don't have it up there at present, but. Here, let's go to our vocabulary journals. You folks haven't been there for a while. Your material from the previous classroom has been brought over. I made a point of bringing it over and posting it all, so you have it there. But if you feel so inclined, as I said, I haven't added anything to mine for some time, and this has been accruing for some years, but I realize how old I am when I look at a word and say, I've got to add that. And I look and I say, yeah, well, it's already there. So you have to go through them once in a while and keep on reinforcing them. So here we have the defalcate, ratiocinate, which I left the pronunciation guide in there just to make sure to get that ratiocinate. Execration, adjuration, and spoliation I added from that list. Look at that list, add to your vocabulary lists anything on this, I don't mean in here. Most of this is probably not going to be that valuable to you. But by all means, go through it and use them. I have in the past had students I can tell that they've been reading my vocabulary list because those terms have been coming over. Okay, let's look here. Brian, which was your favorite of this lot?
Go down a little bit. I think it was this one, I believe.
Houseman?
Yes, this one right here.
Right. I find this one enigmatic. I don't understand the last line. What do you think it means? We're talking about someone going off to war, of course.
Yeah.
Bleach the bones of comrades slain, lovely lads and dead and rotten, none that go return again. For the calling bugles hello, high the screaming fife replies, gay the files of scarlet follow, woman bore me, I would rise. What does that mean?
It's a good question.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could
Maybe
mean
he's
a lot
bored
of
of
things.
staying in his house and he's going off. He's ready to go off to war.
Well,
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
the first few lines looks like, well, it's summertime and he lives in a nice place, where there's outdoors somewhere where there's nature and streams.
Well, he's going not to return again, presumably. So I'm not sure what he meant by that. Kipling, I'm not going to go through Kipling. It's so full of dialect, but by all means, look at it. Of course, the last line is the one that everybody remembers. By the living God that made you, you're a better man than I am. Go again. Charge of the Light Brigade. What's going on in this thing? Forward the Light Brigade.
They're charging into battle.
It's a charge into battle, exactly. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew. Someone had blundered. There's not to make reply, there's not to reason why, there's but to do and to die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Somebody goofed and just threw away all those lives. And those lives went unthinkingly, unquestioningly, slavishly following orders to their deaths.
Yeah.
But notice it still comes up with this at the end. Noble 600. In other words, we're talking about the nobility of the act of sacrifice.
Sacrifice for what, though? Nothing.
That's a good question. And indeed, why were the British in the Crimea anyway? So it is a good question. And one of the big questions, of course, if we look at dulce et decorum est here, we have also to conclude that dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, which means it's sweet and seemly to die for one's country. But the old lie, he's actually saying it's a lie.
Not a typo.
Right. Now, one of the things I found interesting I found a number of poetry books of poetry for children specifically. And looking through them, I found so many of these that tout the nobility of dying for one's country. What a terrible thing to throw at children. In a way, it's something. It's been traditional in just about every country that's been done. But the question is, can you stand back and see what's really happening when you realize the same thing's happening on the other side? That poor character out there whom you're trying to kill and is trying to kill you is doing it perhaps for no particularly good reason. So it's one of the points that's being made here. I gave you earlier a little thing. Let's see if I can find it. Paraprosdokians, yes. Where was it? It's in the assignments. It's now fallen down into the old assignments. Okay, Soul's assignment somewhere here. Here it is. When we were looking here and reading Paine's words, where he says, perhaps the sentiment contained in the following pages are not yet sufficiently fashionable to procure them general favor. A long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right. Of course, he's saying exactly the same thing I just said in a way, but what he's doing, of course, is trying to persuade the colonists to rise up and revolt against the British Empire and crown. Okay, now here's another quote. Did anybody notice this quote thrown in here? Human history would suggest there is neither a belief too bizarre nor an action too appalling for humans to embrace, given the necessary cultural influences. Is that true?
No, wait. Yeah, that's true. So.
It's very hard for children, growing up with a set of ideas that are all espoused by all of their intellectual role models, to give them adequate scrutiny and consideration. By the time they're old enough to think for themselves, they've sort of lost the ability to have some discrimination about what they've been taught. This is from a fascinating character. He's actually a portrait painter, Raul Martinez, and he did a film called The Lottery of Birth. I'm tempted, if this inspires you at all, he does a 10-minute introduction to it on the TED Talk system. Mm-hmm. Would you like to look at that? He does a wonderful job with the presentation. Let me throw that to you. Because I don't agree with everything he says, but he does put it awfully well. Okay, it's taking us off into some other direction. Let's go back up here to where we were. Okay, so our language immersion here. This is the part that I want you to take and stick on your iPod, stick in your ear, and let it seep into your ear and into your language consciousness when you listen to who gave this lecture.
Oh, what's his name? Stephen Fry, was it?
That's right. That's right, Stephen Fry. And again, I don't like calling on him, so to speak, because there's nothing he ever does where he doesn't at least mention urine twice. I don't know why, but his language is superb. Yeah, and he loves the language.
I've noticed that about him. His language is kind of contaminated, we'll say, for public speaking.
I would love to get the message to him somehow or other. That you realize there are teachers who want to use this stuff. Can't you leave out the excrement? Anyway, he's fascinated by language, and he's written a number of things on language, including that wonderful book on how to write poetry, which is linked in our classroom. And so his perspective on language, and indeed the power of language to persuade, and the power of language perhaps even to confine thought, was also mentioned in there, as Newspeak was intended to do in 1984. Okay, then we have the lecture by Fisk, Morningside College, and you folks are listening to college-level lectures and understanding them and appreciating them, and perhaps
for the most part,
preparing
the majority of them are very nicely constructed and just well. And sometimes it's not a matter of the content, it's a matter of the oratory and the language used within. And it's just like, it's wonderfully put. And even if it's a like tough subject, one can still make it really just put the point across and understandable.
Very good, and nicely put. Yeah, which is indeed what we're trying to accomplish here. This one here, especially, Fisk speaks wonderfully. I think very few people speak better than Fry. If anybody does, it's Eagleton.
Mhm.
And Eagleton here is talking about faith and reason, and his disparagement is he upbraids Dawkins for not really understanding what faith is, and for and then for aiming at the misunderstanding with his barbs. But forget what he's saying. The way he says it is indeed. Now, if you want more of any of these, please let me know. But if you have listened to these, listen to them again.
Yeah.
They are just so good.
Mhm.
Okay. What did you think here? Hitchens, for years, I followed him because it's wonderful to have such a trove of free lectures. And they're free, of course, because he's on a book tour. His publishers have sent him off to try to sell these books, and so he's talking, and it all goes on YouTube, and it's just wonderful stuff. The books themselves are linked in the page as well, if you feel like going and reading them, and I recommend that. But one of the points that I make here is that Hitchens' language is actually even superior to that of Paine and Jefferson. However, Paine and Jefferson are wonderful, and let's go over and look at them. This is from the book Thomas Jefferson, Author of America. That's what it's called. And here in the preface, he quotes Jefferson. Now, this is on the occasion of Jefferson having been invited to a 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, which, of course, he was largely the author of, based on material largely drawn from the works of Thomas Paine.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, he's fairly elderly at this point, and he's not at all well. So I'm going to try to read this as well as I can. It's not as easy to read as one might think, because it is indeed complex. I should indeed, with peculiar delight, have met and exchanged their congratulations personally with the small band, the remnant of that host of worthies who joined with us on that day in the bold and doubtful election we were to make for our country, between submission or the sword, and to have enjoyed with them the consolatory fact that our fellow citizens, after half a century of experience and prosperity, continue to approve the choice we made. What he's saying there, he would love to go. This is 50 years after the decision, and they had no real confidence that this was going to go forward. The chances are they could all have been killed.
Yeah.
And John Hancock, of course, may put his signature in enormous letters so that, in theory, George III would be able to read it without his spectacles. And of course, they were all putting their heads on the chopping block. And yet it turned out well. And not only that, he said, after half a century of experience and prosperity, they continue to approve the choice we made. May it be to the world what I believe it will be, to some parts sooner than others, to some parts sooner, to others later, but finally to all. The signal of arousing men to burst the chains under which monkish ignorance and superstition has persuaded them to bind themselves, and to assume the blessings and security of self-government. That form which we have substituted restores the free right to the unbounded exercise of reason and freedom of opinion. All eyes are open or opening to the rights of man. The general spread of the light of science has already laid open to every view the palpable truth that the mass of mankind has not been born with saddles on their backs, nor a favored few booted and spurred, ready to ride them legitimately by the grace of God. These are grounds of hope for others. For ourselves, let the annual return of this day forever refresh our recollections of these rights in an undiminished devotion to them. Isn't that amazing? And listen to the language itself. This is the language of an educated person. It makes one wonder how many educated people we have in the world today. And then he died. Indeed, that's the way he should start this out. Oh, crumbs. What happened here? It's hard to know what the music is.
Yeah.
He starts out by saying, to begin then, at the conclusion. He's writing a biography of Jefferson. He starts at the end with his death. Here, these are quotes. These are not. This is not Hitchens, but everything Hitchens writes is superb. But this one is a quote by Lincoln, who says, "All honor to Jefferson, to the man who, in the concrete pressure of a struggle for national independence by a single people, had the coolness, forecast, and capacity to introduce into a merely revolutionary document an abstract truth, applicable to all men and all times, and so to embalm it there, that today and in all coming days it shall be a rebuke and a stumbling block to the very harbingers of reappearing tyranny and oppression." Again, absolutely beautifully put.
It is.
What is he saying here?
I feel like there's multiple things he's trying to convey. I don't know if there's
He's talking, of course, about what Jefferson put into the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, he's talking about the unalienable rights of man, which, of course, there's one of the books that I've posted up there for you is The Rights of Man by Thomas Paine. Mm-hmm. And that's, of course, where it's based. But in this document, a revolutionary document, he embodies an abstract truth. That's what he's talking about here, an abstract truth, applicable to all men and all times. And so embalm it there. Well, I'm not sure embalm is the word we would use now, but certainly cause it to be preserved indefinitely there. So that in coming days it shall be a rebuke and a stumbling block to the very harbingers of reappearing tyranny and oppression. Tell me if it continues to serve that purpose. Do we look back on the rights of man, the unalienable rights, not to be saddled, for example, and ridden by the 1%?
Well, we should, although it's happening less and less now.
True.
What is happening less and less?
Our rights are being revoked mainly under the guise of terrorism and security.
Very good point. Terrorism and security are part of it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's another immense saddle that's awaiting you all more than it is me. I managed to get through it. And that is higher education. And that saddle is the student loan.
Right. Everybody's got debt.
I plan on having any debt.
It's hard to get around. It's a tricky one. And you can't but conclude that it's no longer possible, really, to get get the kind of education without becoming an indentured servant, essentially, a wage slave to that saddle that has been instituted. When I went through, it was very reasonable. The tuition was $200 a quarter.
Wow.
When Chomsky went through a couple of decades earlier, it was $100 a year. And whole different world now. This is a horrible thing in a way. Now, in following up on that, I had a bit of a talk with Dawson last week, and of course he's studying in junior college right now. I figure out where he's going. And he's taking English in junior college, but he likes this class more.
Yeah.
And I suggested to him, and I think I'd like to suggest to you folks to look into. There's an online institution called University of the People. It is an accredited university, tuition-free. Now, there are a lot of online accredited universities, and they will charge you the earth, or at least they will make you go into debt, which your grandparents may end up paying, or you may pay when you're a grandparent. It's really pretty awful. But this one is very limited because it's all done with volunteer teachers. But they have two majors, one in business, including an MBA, and a major in computer science. So something to think about. And I can't help thinking that it wouldn't be that difficult to manage to go through an online system like that if one has a support group that one is working with, and one can even have lecturers come in and tutors and help one through the process, which could end up making the whole process of getting a degree much more feasible than it is for most people. Just a thought. Okay, this, what I'm looking at here is the PDF, which I found online, of Thomas Jefferson, Author of America by Christopher Hitchens. The whole thing is worth reading, no doubt. I haven't gotten through it all myself.
By Christopher?
Exactly, as I said, his language. Forget the other, he may take other perspectives on things, but his language is superior to just about everyone else, including, I think, some of the writers whom he really revered. And that maybe include Jefferson. It certainly includes Orwell. And in fact, I remember Eagleton speaking specifically on that, saying what a superb writer Hitchens is, and surpasses the Orwell and so forth, the ones he talks about. Anyway, you may not like him, but he does write awfully well, and he has covered this material so well. What do you know of Hitchens? Of course, we have to specify. Not Peter Hitchens. You've seen a good deal from him already, too. Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. Now, he is outspoken critic of a lot of different things, notably Islam. He's not a critic of the Iraq War, which is sort of weird. I think he hated Islam more than he. That. Okay, so here we talked about the biographies page, which has those 3 biographies in it, and the primary sources, which I put up. I put up 3 pages for you: the works of Thomas Paine, the writings of Thomas Jefferson, and the George Orwell resources pages. Think about papers you might be inspired to write on papers. We just read this, or at least a large part of it. This is that young. What is the Ghanaian is the adjectival form of Ghana. I had not encountered that before. This is this young Ghanaian's college admissions essay. Okay, and then you've all seen this one, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
Okay.
funny.
They've done some more besides this one here.
So
if you're
they're
interested.
coming to visit here.
I'm sorry.
Have
They're
they
coming to
already?
visit here. In
They're
November.
coming here in November, it seems. Now, if you're interested in going to live performances, we have a lot of very good things here. I happen to see one that was sitting right over here.
Mhm.
I don't know anything about this one, but this group is putting on Lear, and they're a fair distance away. The one that I enjoy so much going to is the Independent Shakespeare Company, which performs in Griffith Park for free
Oh.
in the summer. And they start at the beginning of July and just go on, and they do 2 or 3 plays. I'm not sure which ones they're doing this year. I'll have to check and see. But they've been doing that for some time, starting with a very small group. I was there at the time. And now they tend to have thousands of people going up the hill.
Mhm.
But they do a fine job of it.
Yeah.
And they also have a small theater in Atwater Village where they perform during the year. And even there, though they charge admission, they have certain days and certain seats that are free, especially if, as a student. You will notice, of course, that I try not to recommend anything that I can't give you for free somehow or another.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you suffer from the same problems that all of us homeschoolers have suffered from, generally single income families. Okay, any questions about what we're doing? Any suggestions about what we should be doing next?
I think we've got some good topics.
Covered, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of good articles to keep reading.
Mhm.
And
Okay,
yes,
you did notice the link to that swatch of articles by Robert Fisk, right?
yes, I actually
Yes.
read a couple.
Good. Tell us about it.
He mainly, I noticed a lot that he actually had a lot more detail than other articles would, and all of them had a very good set of pictures with like descriptive paragraphs, not just one reused photo and the same old captions everybody would put on them. And so if I had kept reading, I just skimmed like 3 or 4 of them. But if I kept reading, I feel like you can gain a lot more knowledge about the Middle East than what the mainstream media gives us.
Right. He, on a few occasions, speaks about what the mainstream media is doing.
Yeah.
And those are very interesting to look at, because, of course, he gets in and finds out what's really going on. And it's amazing he's still alive.
Yeah.
Realize what he's gone through. I'm so glad you got a chance to look at those. I was running around online looking for new and interesting things to read, and I found a Pakistani newspaper. And that was the first time I found an article by Robert Fisk. And I started to read this, and I realized, good grief, here's somebody who can really write. And it has wonderful literary value. He can use words, and he reveres the use of words. And he disparages the lack of it in so much journalism that takes place in the world. And indeed, it's not that interesting to read poorly written stuff or
It's true.
repetitive.
Very true.
Okay, do you have enough to read? Shall we jump into some other large work of some sort? Any thoughts, Azariah? What we should be doing next?
Maybe like more scholarly articles, possibly, or
Okay. Well, you have
The college essay application.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Oh, that is already in there.
you have it there.
Mhm.
If you go and do some searching on, and that may not stay there indefinitely. It's only been up for a couple of months, and a court ruling has been
What?
been passed against it.
Oh,
This is Sci-Hub, and they're trying to take it down. It's difficult to take down because it's in the dark web. But if you search now, you'll find things. Download them, and you'll have them. It may disappear. But I don't know that my going out there and searching and assigning things necessarily the best way to do it. If I look at things and I find something that really jumps out that looks like it would be generally of interest, especially to homeschoolers, fine. But you know what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you do some research there on areas that you find interesting?
That's true.
And share them
That's
around.
virtually everything.
Absolutely. And when you see words you don't know, put them down and share them with us.
Use the engram.
Use the engram here. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I think you probably got more than enough. I've just given you, well, at least 3 books to read, which you may or may not, and beautifully written books.
Definitely.
But should we look into some more literature?
For at least this week.
Yeah.
I think
You got enough for this week.
Yeah.
I will try to restrain myself, but I may add something to it and see what happens. Okay, I look forward to seeing what you're writing.
Most definitely.
Share your thoughts and your vocabulary.
Sounds good.
Have a good week.
Have a great week.
Is this a different projector?
I've never changed the projector. I keep on hoping somebody's not going to hit it and kill my bulb. That I don't know where to get another bulb for this thing.
Okay.
Have a good week. Okay, bringing college prep English class at Excellence in Education to a close.